Hi, everybody. In this screencast, I'm going to walk you through the book code. This is the week where we go through chapter 12, but only the parts that get you acclimated with the database and some interaction with the database. So what we're going to be doing is creating a table, learning how to connect programmatically to that table with PHP. Then we'll be creating an actual table inside the database, and then we'll be able to add an entry and then display that entry. So it's a good week for productivity, and this is going to build into your final project. So um, notice that the book goes into MySQLi. MySQLi is an improved version of the old MySQL, which is deprecated. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you not only the MySQLi from the book, but I'm also going to show you PHP data objects, which is a more modern way of doing this. To this day, you'll see well-known applications like WordPress still use MySQLi. We are now, as of the writing of this, of this course, in PHP 8. And MySQLi is still very, very usable. But I would recommend using, or at least getting to know PHP data objects. So you're going to see both. And I'll leave it up to you which one you wanted to use for your final project. Where we'd like to be is getting to the point where you're comfortable with the CRUD terminology. CRUD, C-R-U-D, means create. Can you create an entry into the database? R is read. Can we show and display those entries? U is update, and D is delete. So we'll get through that in both SQLi and PDO. The only difference will be the query functions. So I can actually go in and take this book code and update it to PDO, or I'll give you a different version. The concept being learn it in steps. You've got to learn how it's stored and how we can manipulate it, okay? So I'm going to open up a new tab right now, and we're going to load phpMyAdmin, which is the GUI of the MAMP database and XAMPP, all of them. So I'm just going to type in phpMyAdmin, and you'll see the little icon come up. And here we're going to see my blog, which is got a lot of fun stuff in it. This is the my blog database, and I'm going to actually drop this database. Okay, so all I have to do that is to, here's the databases here, is to select this and just drop it. You're about to destroy a complete database. Oh my goodness, do you really want to? Yes, I do, because we're going to start from scratch. So if you haven't seen the video that covers phpMyAdmin, take a look. It's in the modules folder for week 12. When you get to know this, when you go through the materials, it's smart just to start at the top and work your way down. But now we're clean. So these are my databases. I'm going to create another one based on the code that's here. So let's get started with the actual code. I've ordered the scripts in the order that they should run. And the first script, 12.1, is mysqli underscore connect.php. So this is just connecting to the database. Now, what you want to do is make a connection and then close it right after. So what you can do is make all your queries here and then close it at the end. So this is mysqli connect and mysqli close. So if we're able to connect, we'll do this. Otherwise, we'll just output a little error message, cannot connect. So right now, it's going to localhost root my blog. Now, when we do this and we run it, you'll notice that I just dropped my unknown database, my blog. I just dropped that database, right? So now I can't connect to it. So let's go ahead and create that. So it was my blog, like that. And you'll see this character set And the best way to do it generally, and it defaults to this, is general CI. CI stands for case insensitive, so that it can store any case. But pay close attention to these others. For example, I'm doing an app right now that is storing Vietnamese characters in the database. So I'm using UTF-8 underscore Vietnamese CI. So they come with a whole list of things, but generally you'll be safe if you just do this. So I'm going to go ahead and click create. And whammo, I now have a database, but there are no tables. So let's go ahead and back to the connection, hit refresh, and there we go. We've successfully connected to our database. Now, keep in mind that we need to make sure that when we start the database that everything's functional, including the MySQL. So if you're on XAMPP, you'll notice there's a different tab for PHP and MySQL. Make sure both of those are selected. But now we're almost ready to play because we do have a database now and we can go on to our next script. So what is that next script? Well, it's going to be a little bit more in the error message category. So when I go to the code right here, we're going to go into ToScript and MySQL Connect again. And you'll notice the code is identical, except for a couple of things. Notice there's no @ on this, that symbol on this, and there is here. And you'll notice that we have the addition of a MySQLi connect error. So what we're going to do now is just take, we'll call it rot for the password. We know it connected properly with that same connection string before once I created the database. But now we're just going to test what the actual specific error message is and how it can help us. So I'm going to go to 2 and click MySQL Connect, and it says access denied for root at localhost. Yes, that's exactly right. What it was I didn't have the right password. So you can mess around with this and see how explicative it is. Let's do the wrong host and just give that a shot and see what it says. Here we go. And you see cannot connect the database. PHP network get addresses, get address info failed, node name nor server name provided or not known. Sort of cryptic. Hopefully at least it points you to the right area, which is localhost here. And now we can go ahead and do successfully connected to the database. So that's how you can error handle with MySQLi. So the next step that we're going to do is we're going to create a table. Now we could do this manually through the through PHPMyAdmin, just to give you an idea. We could easily, like this is create table. I could do new table, 2 columns, whatever, click go, and it would ask me the name of the field in the first field of the table, what kind of character set it is, what the length is, etc., etc. And I say this because there are a lot of scripts out there will give you the table structure. You could always just take this line right here that has the create table statement, and you could put that in your SQL window just by clicking SQL here. So once I do this, it says basically create table entries, ID, integer, unsigned, not null, auto-increment primary key. So this is going to be the first field. It's going to be called ID, but it'll be an integer. It can be, unsigned means it has to have a value. It's going to be primary key auto increment. We'll get into this heavy into WebD 167, but basically it's going to be a number that changes with every entry. So the first entry will be 1, second will be 2, third will be 3, etc., etc. The next field will be a title, name title, and it'll be a variable character, meaning it can take numbers and letters and all sorts of things. And it's limited to 100 characters long. And it's anticipated to not be null. So we have to have values in all of these, the not null. The next one will be entry, which is text, which allows about 65,000 characters in that range. So that's going to be your blog post. And then you have date entered, which is going to have to be formatted with the date time formatting. All of this will allow the character set of UTF-8, which is the most general character set that we allow. That's the Western keyboard. So all those characters that you see on your keyboard in front of you would be that. So when I click go, we should get an attaboy, as they say, and hopefully that it lets me go. I hope I'm not crashing here because I'm going to pause this because I think my computer might be crashing. Okay, so what I'm doing right now is just making sure that there we go. And now we're good to go. I did have so many apps open at that time that my Chrome was actually crashing. So beautiful thing now, we've got a database and we've got our entries. Now I'm going to go ahead and drop this table because I want to do it programmatically through the code. So we're going to go ahead and drop this. Now it's 0. And what's great is when you do drop the query, it generally shows you what the SQL query was, which is a really nice thing when you use the keyboard to insert or delete anything. We'll see that as we go. But the next script is this create table that we're just talking about. So what we've done is have a variable, and again, this is I'm on MAMP, so this will be root and root. And notice this is the same construct as we had in our previous script because we're assuming that we can run all this code inside the condition that we were able to connect. Otherwise, we show the error. Now, there are many ways to do this, but I just want to show you the logic of how this works. So it might seem odd that you have this one condition that makes up your whole page, including the output. But it's actually quite common. When we get more into object-oriented programming, you'll see that this will be in a different script. But for now, what we've done is have a variable that equals create table entries. And if we are able to connect, see the DBC equals the connection? My SQLi query takes the DBC and the query itself and says, okay, if we are able to connect with this query, it's running the actual statement, the SQL query, then the table will have been created. Otherwise, we're going to have that MySQLi, and we're going to run any error messaging that's off. So let's go ahead and run it. And hopefully we have, this is script 3. Hopefully we have the table has been created, voila. And then when we go here and hit refresh on the database, we see the entries. And if I click structure, we'll see everything that just got created, which is a nice, easy way to do it. Anyway, so if we go back, that is creating a table. The next thing we want to do is add some entries. So what we're going to do is have a form that allows us to add an entry to this table. So the first thing we're going to do is take a good look at the code, then we'll run a test. So our form is simple. Our action is going to the same script. Our method is post, and I do recommend post for this because we have a large text area, so it could get quite big, the number of categories. I mean, the number of characters in the post. So we have a title that's limited to 100. Remember our data type for the title was varchar 100, a limit of 100 characters. So what we have is this, and then when the post gets sent, it comes right to the same script. We can have a toggle variable for problems, which is set at false. And if there is a problem, we can make it true. And then if no problem, we can connect, insert, and add the post. That's only if there's no problem. So if problem is true, that wouldn't happen. We just say, please submit both the title and an entry. So our conditions, our validations would be if no empty post title and no empty post entry. Now, if you go down to this, remember, you guys are web developers. You could easily pop into here and do a required. Just like that, and then you wouldn't even have to worry about that. So let's use all of our skills, all of our HTML5 and JavaScript skills. But what's big and pertinent about this is that the insert statement. Always found SQL statements to be pretty understandable. Insert into entries. ID, title, entry, date entered. the values, 0, title, entry, now. Now is going to format automatically to date entered. Now, the cool thing about this is I could easily remove ID and the 0, and it would still enter fine. In fact, we'll prove it. I'm going to go test first title, and we'll put a little blah, 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 blah. Post. Oh, what happened? Remember, I put numbers in my file names. I do that. It seems like I do that every single week here. So what we're going to do is just remove the form action so that it goes right to itself. That makes it a little bit easier. All right, so now I'm going to do test title, blah, blah. And I'm going to look at the source code real quick and make sure, see the form action's empty right there. And now I feel good about this. So now we got this blog entry's been added. Now watch the number that just came in. 1, test title, blah, blah, blah. Do you remember how the last insert statement had 0 as the number? We can just, when it's auto increment primary key, all we have to do is not even use it in our statements. So I'm surprised Larry did that in his book code, but that's fine. Okay, so we've connected, we've inserted the entries, which is very cool. You want to get to this point. And once you get even to this point, you're going to have this feeling of overwhelming success because you can build things now. You can store things, and think of the web when you can store things. You become a Twitter engineer because that's all they do is store information. All right, so that's how to add an entry. Let's talk about viewing entries. Here's the second of the add entries, and the difference in this is the filtration. So let's take a look at this. This is script number 5, and we're using MySQLi set the character set of the connection to UTF-8. That'll control the database, which is not necessary because we already created the database based on UTF-8, but it will work if you ever need it. But what's important is this. Remember, functions work on the closest first and then out. So the first function that we apply to post title is stripping the tags. This will strip any HTML tags from your title entry and your entry, which is the post itself. So no HTML tags. Trim is going to cut white space off the left and right side of the strings. And lastly, MySQLi real escape string is going to add backslashes to quotes so that if we have a statement that we're adding on the output, we want to make sure they're escaped so it doesn't affect the SQL query. Because if remember, if you have quotes on a string already and the entire string's in quotes and you're trying to deposit in a database, it could break the post. It could break the SQL query. So what we're doing is escaping all those characters with the backslash so that the data gets in perfectly. And once again, we can run another test on this, but what we can do is add some fun to it. So let's go to the number 5 script and add entry. Let's make sure, positively sure I don't make the same mistake I always do, which, well, no, actually it is add entry, so we can leave it. But what we're going to do is add some funny characters. So I'm going to add this title is, and I'm going to do a strong tag, an HTML tag, okay? And we're going to do awesome. Yay. And we'll do strong closing, right? And then we'll add some quotes. Let's add some quotes, maybe like that. Maybe we'll add some punctuation. But specifically what we want to do is add those quotes and then another single quote and then a question mark and a couple of these and that. And what we're going to do is post that entry. And then we'll go take a look at it. So if I click browse and we edit that copy, it was escaped for the duration of getting to the database. And now when it gets into the database, it gets removed. So that's why you don't see the backslashes here, but it was about escaping those so it didn't affect the entry. So very, very handy things. Just as an offshoot here that the book does not get into, there is an entire set of PHP filters that here's the filters themselves, data filtering. And what you want to look at is sanitized filters. This is the stuff that allows you to remove all characters except letters, digits, and simple punctuation. But there is a whole library of them that are new to PHP 8. So these are the change logs of how 8 has changed. A lot has changed since 8. And you'll see these constants being shown as variables. So just know that moving forward, there's going to be different things that you can utilize. So keep this php.net open if you do get a job in PHP, because they always keep you updated with everything. And I can tell you the filters that are shown in the book are still working. Like this still works. Trim and strip tags, there's no reason to move that. So the author did pick a good group of tags to add. Okay, so let's move forward to the view entries. So this is going to be, we've got like one entry in there, or two entries, but now we can go ahead and view it. So what we're going to do is do a select statement. Select all from entries, which is the table. Let's order them by the date entered. Descending is what DESC stands for. So we're going to get the latest first. So here's our connection. If any variable equals my SQL query, then run the query. I mean, honestly, you could run this just like this. Honestly, you could do this like that, and then put it in. You wouldn't have to do an R, but they are using R for. Let me get this back here. Oh, that's weird. I thought I can't. Here we go. We're going to do username and password. There we are. Silly me. But what we're doing is making the query, which you already know, but this is our new line. Everything else is the same. But our new line says basically, hey, as long as we can fetch an array of values from R, which holds the return of the query, let's extract them manually by using the field name. So we're fetching it as an array, so this acts like an array, meaning the row is an array, but then we have title. We have ID, and here it says edit entry and delete entry. So just know that each and every element of the record of the database is a row. So this would be the first record's title. Then after that loop, we'd go until we ran out of elements or rows. So row title, row ID, row ID. Now, just in closing on this, we're going to run it, but notice how we have these two scripts that we're going to learn about next week, where it's edit entry and delete entry, but we're passing the value of the ID to those scripts. So next week, when we do this, we're going to go into the edit entry, pull the ID down, and then populate a form and allow us to edit that ID. And if it's delete entry, it's going to be simple. We're just going to delete that record that has that ID, which is a big point in how important it is to have an auto increment primary key ID. So that said, let's go check out our entries. So this is number 6. And again, delete and edit will be next week. So this is in descending order. Everything came out great, including all the punctuation and quotes. I have this title is awesome, and notice the strong tag is not, it didn't get added, it got stripped. So that's why in the source code you see this title. That's the strip tags, and then we've got test title. So we've got our entries. Now, if we were going to add images to this, okay, just my last thing on this, mostly videos should never be more than 10 minutes. I'm going 25 on this, but I think it'll be really worth it. My last comment is if you want to add images to this, okay, we know that this is ID2, this is ID1. We know that because if we look at the source code, we can see ID2 and ID1. So what you can do is have an image called 2.jpg that's inside an images folder inside this folder. And that way you wouldn't have to waste time storing the image inside the database. Generally, that slows down the machine. What we like to do is have a reference to the image when we do work like this. And that makes everything speed up a little faster. But it really does rely on intelligent nomenclature. And that's why if you had, let's say this was e-commerce and you had an image, this was a product and you had one .jpg. If you wanted multiple JPEGs, you might have a folder called 2 for that product and put all those images in that folder, and then we could loop around that directory and show the images. So that's kind of how it's done in a professional setting. But that covers displaying and entry and creation of our tables.